Hello everyone, can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
My name is Adam Hall. I am the U.S. Citizen Services Chief in Hyderabad. My main responsibility is to safeguard the safety and well-being of all U.S. citizens in Telangana. Currently, we have about 100,000 U.S. citizens living in these three states at any given time. Within Andhra itself, the majority of those U.S. citizens are based. Obviously, because so many people come from Andhra, go to the United States, settle a little bit, and then they want to come back to the culturally rich tradition that the Telugu states have to offer. And so while they're here, after they become a U.S. citizen, they're our responsibility. From time to time, those U.S. citizens may need to get involved with the judicial system, whether as someone who's taking a case against someone else, or defending against a case themselves. And so it's very important for us to learn all of the judicial people and to be able to take the knowledge that we get from groups like this here today so that we can better address the judicial concerns that face our U.S.
The consulate, ever since they opened a new consulate in Hyderabad, which is in 2008, I'm one of the first employees. It's been 17 years I've been working with the consulate. Diplomats like Adam Hall come and go like every 2-3 years, but we are there supporting the family.
at least, the history of India is concerned. So, early Vedic period, later Vedic period might be the Hindu period. So then the invasions were started, Alexander and all these invasions. Then by 6th century BC, the existence of Hinduism was challenged by Buddhism, Jainism, new type of religious cults came into existence. Then, advent of Islam. Then the invasions, Ahmad Ghazni, Ghori, then Sultanate period, and Mughal establishment of Mughal. Then advent of Europeans, particularly Portuguese, Dutch, French people, British, and French British wars to have the dominance. So, as an East India Company, the Britishers came as merchants first. Slowly and surreptitiously, they understood the situations in India and they occupied slowly and they established their own rule. And recently, I went to this Mysore and where I have to suppress the Hindu kingdom. All these Bahmani sultans and Nizam, and with the help of British, particularly, of course, at that time, Vijayanagara Samrajya was destroyed by a combined anti-forces of India. So, even though it was destroyed in 14th century, for 200 to 300 years, the history was not known. So one British historian visited that place, found that there was a beautiful, renowned empire. So from then onwards, through the excavations and all these, we came to know that at one time, Vijayanagara Samrajya was there. The glory of Vijayanagara. Simultaneously, if we go to Mysore, so Tipu Sultan, supported by French people, and he understood the French Revolution and everything. And because 4 Carnatic wars, in the first Carnatic war, Hyder Ali dictated the terms to the British in Madras port. Second Carnatic war, Hyder Ali dominated. But from third onwards, the similarity. So, the American history found Columbus. In order to find the route to India, fortunately he went to America, and after seeing the native people, he understood that they were native Red Indians. So then the British people, in those days, when I studied American history, there was a tom-tom in Britain. Whoever family goes to America, they are given some 100 to 200 hectares land for this thing. And we know slowly, of course, by 1750 the revolt was there. the first degree college in New York. I visited Columbia 2016 and 18 and 19. 3 times I visited America. So I had an interest in understanding the American history. I visited Philadelphia, the Washington, D.C., Lincoln, all these monuments I had. So there I understood the first degree college in America is New York Degree College, established by British rulers. America was also a colony. So a revolt, particularly to suppress the revolt of Americans, Cornwallis was sent. So Cornwallis, because Washington and other local people declared their independence, Cornwallis was sent to India as Governor General after Warren Hastings. So Third Carnatic War, Cornwallis caught 2 sons of Tipu Sultan as hostages, and fourth one, Tipu Sultan was killed in that particular Fourth Carnatic. So these similarities, and where the different cultures, multicity, the diversity, unity in diversity, the diverse cultures, maybe European culture, Islamic culture, and different cultures of Indian context were there. Similarly, by way of settlement, of course, only the first Revolution War, 1775, by 1787, Americans prepared this first constitution. So by 1790, they have first 10 amendments brought to that particular American constitution, which are Bill of Rights. So when Indian constitution was prepared, the constitutional makers, particularly Ambedkar and Constitutional Cabinet Committee members, took the advantage of American constitutional success story. 150 years of American constitutional success was taken into as an experience while making the Indian constitution. Of course, Indian constitutional makers adopted the British constitutional model, parliamentary democracy. But when all these were the written constitutional model, the fundamental rights, all these were from American constitutional model. When there was a crisis regarding the Constitution of India's successful continuance, the American experience was very much useful for Indian judiciary to establish judicial review, to establish constitutional supremacy, even to create basic structure doctrine. Constitutional experience has much impact on Indian judiciary. While interpreting the Indian constitutional philosophy, Indian constitutional text. That is one history. So now recently the Indian Supreme Court declared without quoting a foreign judgment. Now we are giving our own judgment, citing our own case laws. But the case laws built in Indian context were mostly the case law developed by American constitutional functioning. Particularly if you are aware, Article 13, judicial review, Marbury versus Madison, Justice Marshall created it. That was indirectly taken into Indian context under Article 13. Law which is inconsistent to the provisions of fundamental rights shall be wide abolished. But who will declare that? The judiciary has to declare whether that law is inconsistent or consistent. That is what is judicial review was indirectly taken back. Central state relation. That's why, as far as constitutional governance, India has much influence. American constitutional experience government model has much influence on Indian context. As far as civilization is concerned, American society is also multifaceted, multi-linguistic, multi-religious, tolerant society. It is a civil society which has tolerance. So Indian context is also the same thing. That's why the problems are similar. So understanding the Indian culture by Americans is definitely much useful for American society. When recently I met some American diplomats in Delhi. One of the diplomats asked, Australian High Commissioner, so what is your opinion on British rule in India? So we cannot give the opinion immediately. But by and large, the positive aspect of British rule is consolidated the administration, made all these different models of the government and to the model of rule of law. So that aspect is there. Of course, exploitation was there and all these rules were there. But they tried to establish rule of law government. They tried to establish Supreme Courts, they tried to establish judiciary. And that's why slowly, whenever there was a movement, Indian independence movement in high peak, Britishers surrendered their power. If you take 1861, 1857 first revolution, 1861 High Courts Council said, and 1885 Indian National Congress, by 1909 Minto-Morley reforms, Government of India Act. So some power was transferred. By 1919 Government of India Act, Montague-Chelmsford reforms, more power was transferred. Diarchy system was introduced. Transferred subjects, some subjects were transferred to the native administration, some subjects were kept with British rulers, that is reserved subjects. By 1935, we have Government of India Act, that is the model for our modern Indian constitution. So that's why meeting these type of people, and they have their own first-hand information, visiting different places of India, particularly India has different
System of India, maybe they're a visitor and they don't even know how does the court system work here. We explain these things and make sure they have the resources. However, it's never our job to get them out of jail. Right? The guest who comes and breaks the rules must face the law. They must have the consequences for what they've done. In addition to those things, we also assist whenever someone is born here, means that U.S. citizens have their baby here. We help to register that birth and give them their citizenship and their first passport. And also, from time to time, people also pass away here. We register that death and make sure that they have the documents needed to go through the process of settling their estate. We have other services as well. If you would, Sridevi, mention those briefly.
Yeah. Some of the other services that we provide are notarial services. If a US citizen or any other national would like to use that document to present in US, we are the office then does notary services. It's like if they get the notary from US Consulate, that is an authenticated commission from the US by the diplomatic offices.
So these services, we know very clearly how to provide those, and there's no barrier for us to provide those services. However, there's currently a legal matter that neither the local courts are able to really grapple with, nor are we able to resolve these situations. And these are the transboundary, meaning international custody and spousal marital dispute issues. Whether it's spousal abandonment, which is a truly horrible thing of someone bringing the spouse and child here, leaving them with no resources, taking their passports, taking their diplomas, and then going back to the US to live their life over there. Whether it's that, or whether it's the issue of one parent taking the child away from the other parent without any kind of consent and resettling here. These issues we don't have any agreements between our nations to resolve, and unfortunately many of these go on for years with lookout circulars being issued, cases filed under 498A, for example, with no way to resolve that if he's over in the United States. And so in those kinds of ways we try to interact with all levels of the judiciary and the central government. Just last week I was honored to be in New Delhi to speak individually with Justice Sikri, Justice Kaul, and Justice Amanullah about these very topics. And we hope someday that we might be able to have these agreements between our two countries to resolve these so that people don't suffer. I hope that answered the question.
Solution that you're seeking for this problem?
This is a great question. There's the matter of the exchange, meaning that if someone is wanted for a crime here in India, will the United States accept that and assist getting them extradited back to here? That's one matter, and that would help to resolve the issues of spousal abandonment as well as cases pending under 498A. The other issue are these transboundary custody issues, and we already have a solution that works for 100 other countries called the Hague Convention on the Civil Aspects of International Parental Child Abduction. This was coming before the judiciary and the central government back in 2014, somewhere around there. Unfortunately, it went out to review at the ministry level, where the Ministry of Women and Child Development, many of these wives might be fleeing domestic violence, and it is inappropriate to send them back to face their abuser. And we 100% agree with that. Unfortunately, the Women and Child Development leaders at that time had not read all of the articles of the convention, because if they would have seen Article 13, the provision is very clear. Whenever there is an allegation of domestic violence, there will be no forced return of any party under any circumstances. So their primary concern that led the government of India not to sign on to this was already addressed within the articles itself.
Just to follow, then US also has a high history of post-separation abuse cases, where victims who have separated from instances of domestic violence have still continued to suffer post-separation. So without there being concrete safeguards with respect to preventing post-separation abuse, I don't think Article 30 will provide the necessary safeguard for those who are fleeing domestic violence.
As international parental child abduction cases, the wife and child have already made it to India, and the accused abuser, and to be clear, it is not a 100% that face these domestic violence issues, but in those that do, the accused abuser is still in the United States. The Hague Convention says that the wife and child may remain in India, no problem at all. So there will be absolutely no forced return of those who are facing domestic violence. That's the primary point. To your other point though, we have had a history of difficulty responding to this domestic violence issue. It is a terrible, terrible problem faced by all countries. And we have made certain progress in that regard. We still have much room to grow. For example, I have been extremely impressed with the Indian model of addressing this situation. We've been honored to visit Bharosa centers and Sakhi one-stop centers that are staffed by passionate and knowledgeable individuals here to address these issues immediately, to provide immediate shelter, free of cost, and to also provide legal aid in those situations. This can be a model to us responding to these issues in the United States as well.
Sir, what about surrogacy children? Suppose a US couple wants to take child from Indian mothers, surrogate mother. Is there any law or is there any procedure for
So this matter, we don't see that as a legal matter necessarily. That is a matter for India to decide. So throughout the past, let's say 75 years, there have been different rules about adoption, different rules about surrogacy, and they've changed from time to time. India is a sovereign nation and has every right to decide what happens to the children of India. So currently, there are strict restrictions on international adoption, usually prioritizing children who might have some developmental issues to ensure that they go to a family who can care for them. And in that same way, we've also seen restrictions on surrogacy as well, to make sure that people are prioritizing taking children who need adoption rather than paying someone who might be exploited in order to give birth, right? So we absolutely support those laws that India has in place. I hope that answers your question.
So in your day-to-day work, how does it impact either negatively or positively, or you see it taking over more in day-to-day work in near future? Your thoughts on that, sir?
This is I'll give a positive and I'll give a negative. From a positive perspective, it's my job to write a lot of reports that go back to the United States. And sometimes it's difficult to think, what word should I use here, the paragraph spacing and formatting. In that way, AI is an extremely powerful and useful tool. I can tell it, I wanted to say this, please make it in nice wording, these kinds of things. Absolutely. Unfortunately, we're seeing negative use of AI. So I'm not in the visas unit, but we do have those who are in my office. And they're starting to see these negative actors using AI to create documents that are fraudulent documents, whether it's a fraudulent passport or birth certificate, fraudulent bank statements, and they're using these to undermine the national security of the United States.
We have
We-
even seen the fraudulent diplomas issued by some of the universities.
And
They created-
AI is aiding in these efforts. So we also need to develop ways to use AI to screen all of the people who want to have access to the United States, to make sure that they are not putting our nation at risk. But that said, I do want to highlight there is absolutely still positive use for AI. We talked about. We just have one very brief sort of legal explanation of what the convention is about. And then to the point of domestic violence, we have another one talking about the state and federal level advancements and progress that we've made to address all of these issues with domestic violence. And not mentioned on this, but one point that I want to make is that Telugu is the fastest growing language in the United States. And people from this area are the fastest growing population. We are now starting to develop specifically Telugu language services to address these domestic violence, to address dowry harassment and abandonment in the United States itself. Thank you.
The email ID, and there is a duty officer available 24/7 after business hours.
And in Gujarat, there is this service problem also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alone, we accept that. Absolutely.
But you require order.
Yes.
It must be.
Transport.